This is Self-Starter. Hi folks, welcome to Self-Starter, a podcast that highlights small business owners, the self-employed and freelancers who've taken the plunge to create their own desirable lifestyle. Bit of a tagline now. My name is Andy Dowling. I'm also the host of the Andy Social podcast, bass player for the Australian metal band Lord, and I'm also a dispute resolution specialist. You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook by following @Andy Dowling, or you can go to selfstarter.com.au where you can learn more about yours truly and anything and everything to do with the self-employment world. Now, this episode is with Craig Bloxsome, the man behind Wollongong City Ghost Tours. That's right, Ghost Tours, a first for Self-Starter and something a bit different for you guys. Now, Craig's had this business up and running for a short space of time, but his experience with running Ghost Tours goes back a little bit further, where he lived in Tasmania for a period of time and ran a really successful ghost tour operation down there, sold it, and then relocated back to the south coast of New South Wales, where he's born and bred, and has been running what has become another really successful ghost tour operation here. And I was quite surprised. I figured that there'd be heaps of ghost tour businesses on the south coast, or at least in Wollongong anyway. But Craig's, on his website says we are Wollongong's only ghost tour business. So it's quite surprising, because there are a lot of creepy places on the south coast, and I'll let Craig explain some of that. So this is a really, really interesting story, and Craig goes into a bit of his background. And when you hear his story, you really understand how he got a lot of his entrepreneurial spirit and came up with all these different concepts along the way. And he's never short of an idea. Extremely creative, and he's always looking for a way to make money, but in really, really creative and exciting ways. So I'll leave Craig do all the explaining. As always, the show notes, everything we discuss will be over at selfstarter.com.au. I'll have links to everything. If you want to go and check out one of Craig's tours, if you're in Wollongong, I'll direct you there, but you can also search for Wollongong City Ghost Tours on Facebook as well. But as always, selfstarter.com.au will be where you find everything, including the takeaways from this episode, which you'll hear later on after this chat. So enough of me and enough of my bird in the background. I don't know if you can hear him, but please enjoy this episode with Craig Bloxsome of Wollongong City Ghost Tours. Thanks, Craig. Thanks for giving me some of your time. I guess before we kick right into it, do you want to give a brief introduction of yourself and what your business is all about?
Yes, certainly, Andy. So, as you said, my name is Craig Bloxsome. I've lived here on the south coast for most of my life, although I've travelled up and down the east coast of Australia and down into Tasmania. And so I'm hitting 50 years old. Raised two children on my own from the age of 6 months and 2.5, and that was probably one of the biggest challenges in my life. I bet. And girls. But how the business come about? So Wollongong City Ghost Tours started on the 14th of March 2015. With a Facebook page of the same name. Living on the south coast, I wanted to bring something different to the ordinary, or the bland way of doing ghost tours that were generally operated here in New South Wales. Pretty much the same way that I was doing down in Tassie, because I started off in Tassie probably about 16 months prior to this, and what I wanted to do was bring a different component to it. Like, let's make it interactive. Let's instead of listening to a tour operator talking about the urban myths and legends, how can I make it interactive? So I thought, well, why not throw paranormal investigation equipment out there and a psychic medium?
Yeah, well.
And it's been successful, it's been working, and from that a lot of people have changed the way that they do and operate ghost tours. It's
definitely a niche type of business. But it can cater for so many different people, because it's part an entertainment thing, but there are people that are obviously very passionate about this kind of stuff as well. So it feeds into two different groups of people.
Oh, most definitely. Yeah, that's right. You got your believers and you got your skeptics, and we welcome both on the ghost tours. You know, the skeptics keep people grounded. The believers think that the slightest thing of a shadow or anything like that is a ghost, and it's not necessarily the way. Yeah.
What were you doing before this business got up and running? So we spoke earlier before we started recording that you were running ghost tours in Tasmania as well. But what was some of your background as far as some of the previous businesses that you've been doing? Okay,
so my first business venture, so before I even start about that, I've started off doing social welfare work, doing youth work and all that from the age, since 1992, hence I'm showing my age now, and progressed along into that, done more and more training, more study. until I worked my way up into being a program manager for a therapeutic residential care program in Tasmania. To give you an idea what that's like, that was 75 staff, 5 managers, and here's me sitting at the top with a credit card with 2.5 mil on it. I could have quite easily
Bit of responsibility.
Most definitely. And this is how it all came about, because my daughters have actually said to me that, Dad, can we go on a ghost tour? And I thought, well, this is great, you know. So, and I thought I really need the downtime away from that full-on work in therapeutic residential care and looking after that many staff and managing a program. So I did. We'd done the 3 ghost tours that were in Tassie. My mind was open. Honestly, nothing happened. And I started off a Facebook page called Tasmania's Most Haunted. Tasmania's Most Haunted sits at 26,500 members now. None of them have been bought. It reaches 44 countries around the world and averages 150 to 250,000 people per month.
Wow.
So, and unfortunately, it was fortunate. I did sell out that business in December last year.
So just a quick question on that. So it was the case that your daughters wanted to go on a local ghost tour, and then actually participating as a guest.
Yep.
There was a light bulb where you sort of went, wow, like there's possibly something here for you. Where you found some interest in what was being done. Yeah,
I've always had an interest in the paranormal and that. So by going on a ghost tour, and to be quite honest with you, Andy, they were boring. You know, like we were listening to it was all about the tour guide, and I thought that's such a shame. You know, we've got so many people here. I could see people looking around; they weren't really interested in it. And unfortunately, at the end of it, they threw a skeleton down in front of everyone, which totally ruined the whole lot. So it was really good, and I started that page off in June 2012. By January 2014, that Facebook page started to snowball, and I was wondering what did this mean. And I thought we went from 364 members up to 2,000 members, and within a matter of weeks we hit 5,000. I wonder what all this meant, and as I looked up into the stars, I thought, well, do a ghost tour.
Yeah.
How would you do a ghost tour?
Incredible.
So it went from there.
So relocated back up here on the south coast, and you decided to bring the concept here to create a business up in the Illawarra in the Shoalhaven region. Yep. What were some of the challenges getting that started? Because you've got the background of doing it in Tassie, and you're bringing that concept up here and obviously making it unique up here. But I mean, what sort of challenges to get something off the ground here in this region? Yeah,
look, from starting back off and doing those interactive ghost tours, well, it didn't take long for it to actually spread, and then every man and his dog's doing a ghost tour of the same nature. So I started doing my first ghost tours at Helensburgh Tunnels. Yep. Which was very, very difficult because we had to take 25 to 30 people one way into a tunnel, which was muddy, and one way out. And the echo that was in those tunnels would have been, was quite phenomenal. So the challenges, I guess, from doing that is I wanted to do something different again. And I thought, well, what can I bring to the Illawarra in the Shoalhaven area that nobody's ever done, or even to the east coast of Australia? And the concept came up with the mystery bus tour.
Yeah, well, okay.
Mystery bus ghost tour. So I got my hands on a 24-seater bus. Yep. We take 16 people at a time, and we take them to 3 undisclosed locations, and
that's right.
3 undisclosed locations, which is that's a challenge in itself because people are saying, where can you go? But we are going on private property, which they've got to appreciate that the guy doesn't want, some people turning up on his property unannounced. Yep. So that was one of the challenges that we had. And the other challenge that we had was, try and, it's a self-belief, can I do it? Of course, you always get those things in your mind that says, no, you can't, look, you're wasting your time. It really isn't about the money because, honestly, you won't be able to retire doing ghost tours or doing this type of business. Yep. However, so it becomes more of a passion, and so we worked out how much the costs were on it, and what sort of people we were targeting. So,
And I mean, obviously, because we're in a great part of the country as well. Because I certainly over the last sort of 15 odd years that I've been living in New South Wales, I hear from so many mates about the local haunts, and there's all these places, especially down the south coast, of these great locations. So you're not short of a location, but no doubt the logistics of being able to get around to all these locations, but also to get the buy-in and making sure that you're doing the right thing as well there would have been some initial hurdles to try and map that all out and work out the logistics around it.
Most definitely, Dan, Andy, because we've got to, you just can't walk into any old building and look, a lot of them are either owned or managed by a national trust or environment and heritage. So you've got to, I don't know, develop a gift of the gab, I suppose.
That's right.
That.
Sell the concept.
That's right. And you are dealing with things that people find it very difficult to believe in too. So that in itself has been a challenge.
How do you deal with those skeptics? Because you mentioned before it's good to have the balance there, it keeps people grounded. But do you get people that come along to these tours that are a little bit of, I guess, for lack of a better term, a bit of dead weight? And sometimes they might bring down the whole mood of it down to a level that's not actually benefiting the whole group. Do you have that sort of experience at times with this?
Yeah, most definitely. So the tours that we've done down in Tasmania took us to the oldest and continually run asylum in Australia, and most definitely haunted, very active. Before I go into any place, I take a paranormal investigation team in, and I'll take a couple of psychic mediums just to let me know that whether it's haunted or not. So the question you ask about the skeptics is, I believe that they serve their purpose on a tour, and yes, they do walk in there, they've got their hands on their hips, their eyes are sort of, their heads on the side, they're really not interested, and most of the skeptics are the husbands or partners of the females that want to go on the ghost tour. So, but look, I have seen the most sceptical people walk out believers, and how we do that, we get them involved in the actual ghost tour. So we give them probably one of the best pieces of equipment that we've got. So if they're visual, they get to see things like that. Or we get the psychic medium that will spend some time with them as well.
That's it, single them out a little
pretty
bit.
Pretty much, yeah, exactly.
You will participate in this. But I think it's a great idea. I mean, in a setting where you're going to have a lot of people that are passionate about and excited to go, you want that excitement to stay throughout the whole tour. And if you've got people that have been dragged along by a partner or have come in with it thinking, oh, this is a whole lot of, codswallop and I'll just, I'm just going to deal with it. But you don't want that mood to drag everyone down. So if you can get those people involved, even on a very basic level where they're holding devices or they're being sort of leading a group into a room or something like that, it really helps sort of get them to sort of feel, even if they don't believe, just to be in those surroundings is pretty
that's right.
As well.
That's right. And look, another challenge, a hard thing to do when doing this type of work is to actually set the tone. So I don't have to scare people on a tour. And in actual fact, I'm probably one of the only ghost tours that don't use fear factor as part of it. People come scared. People come with their adrenaline pumped.
Yeah, absolutely.
My role as running a ghost tour is to keep the tone or set the tone to make sure that it doesn't become boring and that you're just walking around. So, having a good gauge of character, I guess I look around, see the people that are losing interest, and I tend to
just gently bring them back in.
Exactly.
You mentioned before about mindset. When obviously building the business to get ready for it to be launched here in the Illawarra and the Shoalhaven, was there any? I mean, obviously you mentioned fears about whether it was going to be successful and what you were going to, what it was going to be received or how it was going to be received. But, what sort of fears leading up to that first tour that you booked? The first people that you booked. Was there any concerns about that you had to sort of break through?
Yes. Look, there was. Look, the biggest fear I had there or concern was my self-belief. Like first of all, like here I am. I'm taking people through the expectations. Have I built it up to something that I can't live up to? So,
and without putting you on the chair, from a psychological point of view, is that something that you've had to come back to again and again over the years, as far as meeting that mindset and going, just having to put yourself on
Yep.
on the soapbox, but on the stage to say it's now or never. Like you've got to follow through with this and take action.
That's right. Yeah. You got to run at it, I guess. In a sense, not run away from it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
From a marketing point of view, when you were launching your business in those first few tours, how did you get word out there? I know you had a successful Facebook page that was based in the Tasmanian business, but up here, how did you get the word out there so people in the local area knew that this existed?
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, I think social media is probably one of the biggest things. So having an Instagram, Twitter, Facebook page. Look, the Facebook page is probably the best. But also, when it comes to marketing, it was also getting involved in the papers, the radios, usually with any sort of media. As soon as someone gets onto it, someone else will follow through. And I've been on radio, and it's a fortunate, unfortunate thing that if anything spooky happens, they're now starting to call me.
Perfect. Yeah, that's exactly what you want. To get in front of people in the local media, was it a case of you just contacting, the local papers, the local radio, and just introducing yourself and what your business is all about? Was that sort of as basic as it was, or did you have sort of a strategy or something when you're coming into it to try and work out the best way of tackling this?
Yeah. Oh, look, my mind just never switches off, Andy. Like I just think, how am I going to market it? And I thought, well. It was pretty simple. It was about getting involved into, say, the Illawarra Mercury, for example, and having to talk to them and say, look, we're launching the only ghost tour operations in the Illawarra area. Are you interested?
Yeah.
Yep.
Perfect. And I think that's a good thing. I mean, I've certainly experienced it living sort of in a regional area. Well, it happens anywhere in the country, but, journos and anyone that works in the media are always looking for a story, and they're always looking for something to talk about. And if you can pitch it the right way and make their job easy and actually paint a lot of the story for them, then they're just filling in the gaps in between. And so
that's right.
I think a lot of times we sit back and we wait for people to contact us, and it's never going to happen because that person might not know you even exist.
No,
if you can go to them with a whole game, like a whole story and everything for them, and say, this is something that potentially you could write about or talk about on radio or whatever it is, then it makes their job so much easier.
Yeah, exactly right. And look, how I first started in Tasmania was doing media releases.
Okay,
we'd hit the televisions, radio, media print, and all at once with the media release. And it wouldn't take long. So we'd invite people along on the tour for free to come and experience that.
Perfect.
They would give good feedback. Hopefully give the feedback.
Yeah, that's right. Fingers crossed. So it's been up and running for a little while now, the Wollongong City Ghost Tours. What are the current challenges that you've got at the moment? So you're up and running, it's doing well, you've had a bit of exposure through the media and tours seem to be going well, but what's some of the current sort of challenges that you're facing at the moment?
Yeah, look, probably a good challenge at the moment is some of the places that I want to get into, I can't. So they're either shut off to the ideas, or they're privately owned. So running ghost tours, people do think that you need an old building, and look, it sets the tone of going into an old building, but it is really difficult, Andy, trying to get somewhere to actually run regular ghost tours. Hence the reason I thought, well, if we can only, instead of having one set place, why don't we introduce a bus and take them to three set places, even if other people are running them, or have these places.
I think that's a difficult thing because you've got to battle a perception. A lot of these places that are privately owned, they might think that people are coming in to potentially tarnish whatever's sitting there, and so to be able to go in there and give them reassurance can be a difficult thing, especially if they've had bad experiences in the past with trespassing and all these kind of instances. They might not want to attract more attention to what they own as well.
Exactly.
So it's a hard thing to combat.
It certainly is. One of the properties that we go into is a private residence, and they're a great family. However, he flies in, flies out, and he's not there during the day. And he's reasonably young. He's younger than me, and he has his family there with children. So he doesn't want people, or unknown people, walking up onto his property.
Absolutely, It's a lot of hurdles, and I think that's just going to be something you'll always have to deal with as the business continues to operate. With your history being on the south coast, You're born and raised here.
Yep.
You have travelled and lived elsewhere, but you come back. One thing that I've seen a lot is not so much the negativity, but a lot of talk about lack of opportunity, unemployment, and people sort of falling into the trap of government assistance and just, I guess, not finding where the opportunities are. And I think a big thing for this podcast that I've seen with a lot of people taking initiative, and you're another person that's now added to the list, is people that are creating their own desirable lifestyle, which is what I always talk about. So, I mean, what do you see in Shoalhaven or the Illawarra as far as opportunities for other people?
Well, we live in a society, Andy, where the negativity or the negative side of life overrides the positive. We don't hear that much of the positive stuff that's actually happening out there. So we talk about high unemployment youth in the Shoalhaven and Illawarra. And again, I think it's now starting to become generational, because I grew up in that same area, living here all my life as well. And both my kids don't live here no more, so they've moved out of the area. Look, the difficult thing is the youth around here. It's so easy to fall into a routine. It's so easy to think, well, okay, I've got to get on youth allowance because I need money, instead of thinking, well, okay, what can I do to get a career or make a career? Yeah,
and I think a big thing that I've seen is that there's a lot of people down here. So I mean, if you're just looking at it as a numbers game, there's a lot of people that live down here, and we all want the same things as people in the city want. So if you want to keep it really simple, you can do very basic services or create goods or products for people, because the population here wants the same things as people in Sydney or Canberra or Brisbane or Melbourne. And but I think we sort of, as you said, we get stuck into a pattern or a routine, and thinking that there's only one particular path that we're allowed to walk on. And there's a lot of options that people have, and it's not always the case of, I need to get out of the Shoalhaven, or I need to get out of the Illawarra and get to Sydney because that's the only place I'm going to find opportunity. There's potentially a lot here as well.
There definitely is. Make it, create it, pursue your ideas, like I've had, my background is I work in social welfare, so I've spent 20 odd years working in social welfare, or working with families, or disadvantaged families, and learning and teaching these families, giving them a sense of worth, like a better sense of responsibility, how to break cycles and all that. It's,
I think it's... Unfortunately, a lot of people are products of their environment, and I think, especially a generational thing. I think if we're brought up in a certain way with a certain way of thinking, it's very hard to break out of those patterns. So hopefully things like this podcast, and also technology getting better, and people have got phones now and they can quickly go online and search for things and get information, that they'll start to learn about what other people are doing around the world, and realise that, wow, I can actually be really creative here in my hometown and do something really successful, and not have to worry about, there's no job vacancies at the moment, so I'll sit there and I'll just wait until a vacancy opens up. I'll create my own job.
Yeah, exactly right. Like if there's things are happening around Australia and the rest of the world, I think we need the mindset that instead of going to these places, we need to bring these things here.
Absolutely.
Like I said, we live in what I consider to be God's country. We live in the best part of Australia. We've got the most beautiful beaches, we've got the rainforest, we've got the wildlife here, and we've got some really great people. Unfortunately, these people do have a mindset and believe that they need to move out of the area to succeed. Like I said, I've lived here all my life, and I believe that success just doesn't come from your environment, it comes from inside out. Like you've got to have that belief, and there's got to be a lot more programs and a lot more training around having self-confidence and to be able to take that step outside of what they normally would.
Yeah, absolutely. That could be a massive rabbit hole that we could jump down with just that alone. But it's something that I'm quite passionate about, and which is sort of the underlying of what this podcast is as well, is just to give people a little bit of an insight of what other people are doing, and learn from people, and listen into a conversation and go, oh, I didn't know I could do that, or I didn't know that it could potentially be that easy if I just took some action and took the plunge and faced some fears. So hopefully it plants some seeds with different people when they listen in over time. Before we wrap up, with the business itself, I mean, this version of the business in the Illawarra has only been up and running for a short period of time.
Yep.
What's the next 6 months or the next 12 months look like? Is there sort of any immediate plans? I know you mentioned with trying to get out to more locations, but what's it look like for the business?
Okay, so we're building up on it. So our future, our vision for the next 6 to 12 months is to, I guess, build up on it. We're still building up, but we want to plateau out so we can actually look at and reflect about where we're coming from.
Perfect.
We want to be able to market the right people, travel around. I'm looking for options and opportunities that are out there. So whenever I do a ghost tour, I'm always talking to people and always think, well, and a lot of people in that spooky environment where they come and do a ghost tour, they're always talking about, well, I've got a ghost, or I know somewhere that's haunted, and I usually take them up and I treat people with a lot of respect, and I follow up on leads. A lot of people say, can you come and investigate my place?
Okay.
And that's what's led me to now look at places that are run by the Environment Heritage.
Yep.
So things like asylums, looking at things, we may even lead into escape rooms of some sort in the future.
Okay. Yeah.
But something with a little bit of a twist.
I love it.
So who knows?
There's so many possibilities because you think just on the surface, you go, oh, what's a ghost tour? You go to a stereotypically or a cheesy, creepy place, and you walk around and you tell a couple of stories, and that's it. But it could really sort of evolve into a lot more, and it can create a lot of additional services and things off the back of it. So it's quite exciting.
It really is, because what actually come from doing ghost tours is the decision to buy a drone. And from that droning, I've started having more of an interest in photography. Okay. So I've been asked now to do some weddings, take some aerial shots for business. I think there was a bit of a business idea that I started off with, and thought, well, okay, a lot of people do real estate when you buy a drone and take a lot of aerial photography. I thought there was something out there in the way of how can we use drones in the building industry? Instead of using scaffolding these days.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's just one idea leads to another.
And the good thing about that is that you don't have to put all your eggs in one basket as well. No. So it's not always about just the one business, and as long as you've got the time to be able to do it, you're not restricted to one thing. You can have a whole range of different things in different pockets, different little baskets, and it keeps life interesting.
Yeah, it certainly does. Yeah, look, and what's important to me is my downtime is actually forgetting about doing ghost tours, forgetting about having a social welfare, career, and sitting at home and just looking at the birds, listening to the waves.
Absolutely.
And
a bit of a reset.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think that's where most of my ideas come from. Is the ideas are there when I'm not thinking about anything else.
Yep.
And then pursuing them. Do I pursue this? And how do I pursue it? And then who do I need in my team to help me achieve this? Yeah.
I love it. Well, I'll put links to the business, especially the Facebook page, of course.
Thank you.
And anything and everything that you want to plug and place in there, we'll do that. But Craig, thank you so much, and I'm really excited to see where this evolves into. And I'll have to come on a tour sometime as well.
Oh, look, when you're ready, Andy, my word, make sure you do.
Sounds good. All right, thanks, Craig.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. If you want to go on one of Craig's tours, or maybe you just want a bit of a sticky beak to see what this ghost tour business is all about, you can go to the show notes, as always, at selfstarter.com.au, and I'll have all the links and resources. Everything we discuss will be in the show notes over there, including my key takeaways from this episode. Now, I got 4 main points. There was heaps of things I got out of this episode, so if I do miss something, please let me know, whether it be via selfstarter.com.au or on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. Shoot me a message. I would love to hear from you. So the 4 main things that I got out of this episode. Number 1, create your own news stories. So do you want to get some local coverage in a newspaper or on radio? Don't just ask, but actually pitch a story. Journalists and those that work in the media are always hunting for stories and content. So make their job as easy as possible by pitching a story, a concept, angle, reasons as to why it's valuable information for their readers and listeners, and even include some high quality photos as well. But you need to do whatever you can to ensure that the person who's taking consideration doesn't have to work too hard for you. Work for them. If you spin it around that way, your success rate of actually being highlighted in the local papers or on the radio or anything of the such is going to be a hell of a lot higher. So what can you do for them? Number 2, become a key person in that industry. Craig's ensured that he's in the conversation locally when it comes to paranormal topics and stories. At times, he's been approached to comment on other stories and events that might initially be unrelated to him and his business. But by being referred to in related conversations, Craig has the advantage of further branding upside for his business, and there's also an indirect sales opportunity for more customers down the track. So something for you guys to think about is that if you are in a bit of a niche or a particular industry or topic, how can you become that go-to person in your line of work, interest or industry? So something to really think about, because that can definitely have a hell of a lot of upside for you. Number 3, diversification. There is nothing wrong with putting a single focus on one business. However, there is also absolutely nothing wrong with expanding or creating new lines of work off the back of your initial creation. Craig is starting to use his profile in the paranormal world to seek private client work that is actually unrelated to his ghost tours. In addition, Craig's also discovered opportunities that have come from the equipment that he initially bought for the purpose of his ghost tour business. So in this case, being a drone. Craig's ensuring that every idea and opportunity is being considered, and it's having great results for him. Number 4, embracing the naysayers. Craig has embraced the skeptics who are usually dragged along by their partners, family members, friends to these ghost tours by having them included in every way possible, from holding the paranormal equipment to giving them opportunities to work with the on-site medium. Craig believes that these skeptics bring a balance to the tour experience, which he welcomes, and loves to show not only the believers but the non-believers what the tour experience is all about. So those are my 4 key takeaways. As I mentioned before, if there was something that you got out of it that I haven't highlighted, I would absolutely love to hear from you, whether it be through the website, selfstarter.com.au, or on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook by searching at Andy Dowling as well. As mentioned before, all this information, blog posts, everything we discussed in this episode will be in the show notes over at selfstarter.com.au. Now, before we wrap up this episode, a few quick things. If you want to support this podcast, please, I would absolutely love it if you share it around to anybody that's interested in the self-employment world. But also you can leave a review, whether it be on Facebook or on Apple Podcasts or anywhere on the internet. It all helps. And thank you so much for those people that have been supporting the podcast. Speaking of thanks and support, I must mention that I've discovered that I'm a finalist in the 2018 Australian Podcast Awards for Host of the Year for the Self-Starter Podcast. I'm absolutely blown away. I'm so thankful and so grateful for this national acknowledgement, and just being named as a finalist is an incredible achievement for not only me and the podcast, but for every business owner that's been highlighted so far through Self-Starter, and the business owners that will continue to be highlighted in the months and hopefully years to come as well through Self-Starter. So a massive win for all of us, including you listening. The podcast is obviously bringing value to people, and it's great to get that feather in the hat to know that we're on the right track. So a massive, massive thank you. If you want to learn more about the other finalists in this category and all the categories for the Australian Podcast Awards, you can go to australianpodcastawards.com. And the winners of every category, including Host of the Year, will be announced on the 5th of May in Melbourne. There is an awards night for the Australian Podcast Awards 2018, and you can buy tickets via the australianpodcastawards.com website as well. So that's enough from me. Thank you so much. Another episode coming out in a fortnight. In the meantime, read the blogs, share the stories around, message me. I'd love to get feedback from you guys. I really appreciate all the support. Until then, bye-bye.